It was okay until my parents stopped liking each other. That's how my mind says it. Gentle and wrong. Like a teacher writing a soft sentence on a chalkboard while the room floods. My father started drinking, like the bottle could argue with him better than anyone. And my mother started spinning in place until everything in the house needed saving. I was 15 when the air in our flat changed. But the real story didn't start until I turned 20 and realized love can't fix people who refuse to be held. I'm 30 now. I'm an African woman with a good job, a tiny apartment that smells like lemon cleaner and shea butter, and a family history I used to keep folded small at the bottom of a drawer. My father's drinking was a slow road that suddenly became a cliff. At first, it was just weekends. Then it was just a few after work, the day I found a bottle under the bathroom sink, tucked behind bleach and mop heads. I knew he'd started hiding. He moved out to get space and found a woman who laughed at his jokes and didn't ask why Tuesday smelled like Saturday. He drank more with her. I told myself he was happy. I told myself my mother's voice had gone sharp and maybe he needed quiet. I told myself 1,000 stories because sometimes the truth feels like chewing glass. Then a clever combination, his phrase, not mine, left him on the street. The woman he lived with kicked him out after a fight about money and a fight about respect that probably wasn't different. His friends were tired. His siblings said he embarrassed them. My cousins went deaf. He drifted to the same 3 corners, like a tide that forgot it was water. Nobody could tell anyone anything. In my family, shame is a bank account. You don't spend it. You pretend it's not there. When I tried to say the words out loud, Dad is sleeping under the bridge. My aunt touched my shoulder like she'd found lint. No, he isn't, she said gently, as if correcting my grammar. Everyone denied knowledge and refused to help him. I was the only one who kept him afloat. He sucked money from me like it was oxygen, then attention, then things. He asked for food and shoes, and phone airtime, and just a little to get on my feet, and then he staggered back to the same corners and drank more. Imagine walking into a posh office in Santon or Victoria Island, glass everywhere, security in crisp shirts, floors that echo just enough to make your heels sound expensive. Imagine the guard at the front desk, looking small and brave, calling you quietly on the phone at reception. "Your father, ma'am," he says, eyes kind, almost looking past you to give you privacy in public. Again, I can still see the shape of my father in the doorway. Too thin, the color of rainwater, the kind of tired that isn't about sleep, shirts that used to be white, a smell like old alcohol and sunburn, his eyes trying to be proud and failing. I was red-faced each time it happened, ashamed of the man and ashamed of my shame, which is a special kind of knot. I'd put cash in his hand and call a taxi and tell him to go back to the town we came from. "People know you there," I'd say. "You can get a job with your cousin's husband. There's dignity in a start." He'd nod. The way people nod when their head knows a thing their body is too tired to love. I said it so many times. I learned to hear it like a script. Go home, start again. Let people help you, who won't let you drown to make a point. He made it as far as the bus once. Then the driver asked him for the fare, and he looked at me like a child. I paid. He called me that night from a number I didn't know and said, "I'm heading somewhere finally." That's what he said. Heading somewhere. I never heard from him again. It took months for my body to stop expecting the receptionist to murmur, "Ma'am." I'm still not sure which hurts more, not knowing if he found a small place to sit and be sober, or knowing there's a version of me in a universe that walked him to a shelter and watched him walk inside and waited and didn't leave. Was I blind, or just scared to see the truth, that loving him like a daughter wasn't the same thing as saving him like a god? While my father was dissolving in public, my mother was dying in private. She had always been the kind of woman who could find a use for anything. Bread bags became gloves, yogurt cups were for screws, old calendars, perfect for grocery lists. It looked like resourcefulness when there was money. It looked like survival when there wasn't. After the financial crisis ripped through our neighborhood, after a friend's friend swore a blessed scheme would triple anyone's savings, after my mother put in everything she had because it's our turn, she lost it all. One day she had enough for a future. The next day she had receipts and a headache and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She cracked after that, not like a plate that breaks clean, like a mirror that makes 5 faces out of one. She developed a condition I didn't have a word for at first. Hoarding is a diagnosis now, a show with shock music, and before and after pictures. To me then, it was just my mother coming home with 3 broken chairs because they were free. It was her saving every newspaper because history is happening every day. It was plastic containers with no lids and lids, with no containers that insisted on marriage. It was a hallway that narrowed and a living room that forgot it was supposed to be alive. Imagine being a young woman, pretty because your aunties tell you so, with men who notice you and girls who want to borrow your eyeliner. Now imagine not being able to take anyone home because your home has become piles and stacks and paths that make you turn sideways to pass the history of your family. Only my room was still clean, and that was because I learned to buy my own lock. I left for a business trip once, a month in Nairobi, shadowing a senior manager, because my boss wanted me to see how real systems run. I was 24 and important for the first time in a room. My email sounded like someone I wanted to be. I came back and opened my door, and the clean air I had earned was gone. My mother had decided my room shouldn't be an insult to the idea of keeping. She had used it as storage for more love in the form of plastic and paper and clothes other people didn't want. The air moved differently in that room. It felt like breathing through a towel. The rubbish level in our flat was over a meter now. I could lose things in it. Keys, my temper, my face. I stood in the doorway and my hands remembered how to shake like a child. I didn't yell. I didn't know how to yell at someone who genuinely believed she was building a soft place for us with hard objects. For a long time, I couldn't tell anyone. Shame isn't a large emotion. It's small and heavy and sits in your pockets, so your gait looks normal. I learned to lie with a smile, which is a skill some people call diplomacy. When friends asked to come over after a night out, I said no, because my mother is sleeping, and watched the respect on their faces turn to the kind of pity people give animals at a zoo. When a man I liked asked why we never went to mine, I made a joke about how my cooking would ruin him, and he laughed and said he'd risk it. I didn't let him. I was terrified he'd see my life and think it was my heart. I moved to a larger city because it's easier to be no one when the sidewalks forget your name. I got a 1-bedroom that cost too much and felt like I'd bought a piece of peace that didn't fit in the bag. I kept the kitchen clean enough to eat off the counter. I kept the bathroom spotless enough for my mother to say, "You could cut tomatoes on that tile," which was meant as a compliment, I think. I fell in love with a man I met at a shoot for a health campaign. He was a model, 24 to my 30. Internationally fine, with a laugh like a warm motorbike. People will say what they want about age gaps. I will say this. He made me feel young without making me feel dumb. He had an angelic character. That's what my grandmother would have said. He said please and thank you, and didn't turn kindness into debt. When my mother came to visit us for 2 weeks, I believed we could keep her illness in a guest room like a suitcase. I should have known better. She arrived with one bag and a determination that frightened me in the small ways. She saved every receipt. She collected hangers from the cleaners because they throw them anyway. She found a cracked mirror in the alley and said it was still good because you could see most of your face in it if you leaned. She went on a walk and returned with a dining chair that had 3 legs. I can fix it, she said, patting its broken body like it was a pet. I wanted to cry and laugh and apologize to the chair. When she left, it took me and my boyfriend an entire day to clean. He wore gloves without making a show of it. He never made a scandal of my mother. He didn't say, "This is crazy." He said, "Where should I put these?" Which is a kind of love I haven't found in a poem yet. Needless to say, we kept it confidential. That's the word you use when family turns you into a secret. You protect the person who needs protecting, and you protect the part of yourself that can't tell the truth without breaking. I told my boss my mother was particular and needed patience, and my boss said, "Oh, so she's like my mother." And we laughed because laughter is easier than a map of pain. My boyfriend found a sugar mommy. I joke now because humor puts sugar on hard bread. What really happened is more boring and more honest. 6 years later, I decided to move abroad for work. He loved the son we had. He loved the city where he had a name. He loved a lifestyle I couldn't give him in a place where everything is a currency. He wanted to be admired and posted and paid for being beautiful. And he was. He chose to stay. It was amicable. We didn't give each other speeches. He said, "I want more." And I said, "I know." We hugged like we were grateful for a season that had ended without rotting. The first apartment I rented abroad had walls thin as bread and neighbors who argued in a language I understood and didn't. I set my 3 mugs on the counter like soldiers. I bought a plant. I didn't know what to do with my hands without my father's calls or my mother's lists. Then the front desk called me one morning. "Your father, ma'am," the voice said, but it was a story I remembered, not a lobby I recognized. I'd been gone long enough to know the guard was in my head now, a permanent resident who made sure I didn't forget where I came from. Love is what it is, but memory is a trickster. I visited home 3 months after I moved. My mother had built 2 new towers of newspapers. She had saved every vaccine card and every announcement from our church, and 3 boxes of shoes that were all left feet. "People will need them," she said when I asked. "For what?" I said. Not because I wanted to be mean, but because I wanted to hear what reason looked like in her mouth now. "To know," she said, "to know what happened." The house smelled like dust and old oil and disinfectant and the sweet rot of fruit you forget you bought. Roaches were both myth and reality, always in the corner of your eye, sometimes under your foot. I cleaned what I could before she told me I had ruined her system, and then I gave up and made soup because I can still cook in a battlefield. My aunt asked me why I didn't do something about my mother. "What would you like me to do?" I asked. "Throw her life away while she is holding it?" "Yes," she said, and I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I needed to occupy my mouth. I bought my mother a storage unit she refused to use. I bought her clear bins because I read on a blog that clear makes it easier to let go. She filled them and stacked them, and then draped a sheet over them like she'd built a tomb. I didn't have a vocabulary for caregiving at 20. I barely have one now. All I had then was small rules and a cowardly courage. I didn't give her cash. I gave her groceries. I took her to see someone who said she was trying to control what she could, and that the problem isn't the stuff, it's the safety the stuff represents. And I nodded, like I understood, even while my insides yelled. But we cannot live here. I bought her a safe where she could put the documents that mattered, and she put a bag of rubber bands in there and smiled like she had won. There is a particular humiliation in being the responsible one in a family that refuses to perform its end of the contract. People think you're strong. You learn to smile like strength is a plan. Inside, you are a set of old door hinges that have never been replaced because you keep telling yourself they still work. I didn't bring partners home. I didn't tell friends. I made jokes about how I preferred my place because the light hit my plants perfectly at 3, which was technically true and very far from why. I told myself I was protecting my mother's dignity when really I was protecting mine. There is a difference. I learned it late. The worst day wasn't the day my father disappeared or the day my mother filled my room. It was a Tuesday. I was at my desk abroad, a desk I'd earned with late nights and the shape my back makes when I'm trying to be perfect. I felt a wave of something I couldn't name. Panic attacks announce themselves like a car door slamming in another room. Your body hears danger, and your brain looks around and sees potted plants and spreadsheets and polite colleagues and says, "Not here." The security guard in my head said, "Your father." And I stood up and went to the bathroom and splashed water on my face because water seems like the right answer in movies. I stared at myself and saw the child who learned to be quiet so the house didn't break any faster. I leaned on the sink and whispered, "It's not your fault." And like a cliche, I felt something shift. I went back to my desk. I typed an email. I lived. I wish I could tell you my mother got better. She didn't. Not in the way TV teaches us to expect at the end of an episode. She got different. She learned to call me from the shop when she wanted to bring home 5 mixing bowls that didn't have mates. I learned to say, "Let's get one," like a person negotiating a hostage situation where the hostage is space. She fell once, and I saw the bruise on her hip and said, "Enough." And we argued for 2 hours. And then she gave away a box of clothes to the church and called me crying because she was sure she gave away the wrong box. I learned that nothing in life is as linear as the graphs they show you in training. I stopped trying to start and finish with people. I started trying to stand beside. We talk about love like it's a glittering noun. It's often a set of verbs nobody posts about. Love is bring, call, wait, again. It's waking up on a day you were going to rest, and instead, taking 3 taxis across town because your mother heard a sound in the walls, and you know that if you don't come, she will soothe herself by collecting 3 plastics, chairs left outside the neighbor's gate, and calling them rescue. It's going to the shelter where you think your father might be and leaving without finding him and going back the next day anyway. Because hope is stubborn and humiliation is a muscle. I did move countries again. The job was better. The flat was smaller. The sky outside my window was a different kind of blue. My boyfriend stayed. By then, different boyfriend. Not the model. A man who loves sentences and can make an egg 5 ways without making it an identity. We tried long distance, but long distance is only long for one person at a time. He found someone who could go to dinner on Tuesday with him. I let him. We cried in the kind, grown-up way where you wipe your face with the backs of your hands and say sincere things like, "I want great things for you," and you mean it. People hear sugar daddy and they imagine yachts. Sometimes a sugar daddy is just a person who has time and attention to give, and you are tired of being the only adult in a room. My father is a ghost I set a plate for on holidays I don't celebrate. My mother is an empire of paper in a 1-bedroom that has become small gods and rituals. I am a woman with 3 mugs and a plant that refuses to die and a calendar full of reminders that say things like eat lunch and text, aunt and coal plumber, that are really reminders that say keep doing the small things because the big things are not yours alone to fix. There's a story in grief that says you have to forgive to be free. I don't know that I believe in absolutions like that. I believe in boundaries. I believe in telling the truth, in rooms where the truth can be held. I believe in the clean kind of revenge that looks like not becoming what hurt you. Some nights I still wake at 2:14 and smell diesel and sunburn and the sweet rot of fruit, and I don't know which city I'm in. I get a glass of water. I sit on my couch. I think about the security guard who called me ma'am, like it was a bandage. I think about the time I told my father to go home, and how I have been saying that to myself ever since. Go home, not to where the papers are, not to where the bottles slept, to where the air is clean enough to breathe, and the floor under your feet is steady, and you are allowed to be tired without being used. I didn't know that could be my address. I am learning to forward my mail. If you've lived any version of this, you know the shame is not yours. If you've lived any version of this, you also know it feels like it is, because you're the one with the clean hands and the keys. Tell me if you've ever been the one embarrassingly competent in a family that swore up and down they didn't need saving. Tell me if you've ever gone to a posh job and taken a deep breath in the elevator because the person who made you came to the door unmade and asked you for spare change, like you have anything spare. Tell me if you've ever come home after a good day and felt your chest harden when you see a plastic bag, because your body assumes it's the beginning of a mountain. Once, last summer, my mother asked me to help her find a blue scarf. We went through 3 piles, and then 1 more, and then we sat on the floor, and she told me a story I'd never heard about the first dress she bought in the city. And I realized in that second that the stuff is stories, yes, but also some kind of love she gives herself, because other people's didn't always arrive on time. We found the scarf. It wasn't blue anymore, not really, but she wrapped it around her neck and I said, "It suits you," and she looked like a girl. That's the thing I hold under my tongue when people say, "Why don't you just clean the house?" Because sometimes the house is the way a person knows they exist. I used to think my father left because we weren't enough. I know now he left because the bottle told him a version of himself he liked better. And believing a lie is easier when the truth is that you're failing the people who love you. If he's alive, he is somewhere biting into an orange on a street corner and thinking about nothing important, and I hope the sun is on his back just so. If he's not, I hope someone was there to call him Sir one last time so his last minute had dignity. I don't know if that's true. I don't need to know anymore to keep breathing. There is a photo on my fridge. It's me at 18 next to my mother, her hair wrapped in bright cloth, my father in a shirt before it was just shirts. We are smiling at the camera like we won a prize. We did. The prize was a family. It didn't come with instructions. It came with a kitchen and a table and the sound of someone you love moving in another room. I buried a version of that family and climbed into another, built out of coals and visits, and a storage unit we pay for because it keeps the hallway clear enough for my mother's hip and my guilt. A friend asked me what I would tell my younger self. I said, "You don't have to be the lock and the key." I said, "Ask for help sooner." I said, "You can say no to the person who taught you yes. You can say no with love and wash your hands after." I said, "You can hold a boundary and still hold a hand." None of that fits on a motivational poster. All of it lives on my calendar as reminders with emojis. Because sometimes you need a small picture to make a large truth light enough to carry. I am not healed in the way people like to present at brunch. I am most days okay. That is not mediocrity. It is a miracle. I keep a bag by my door with bottled water and crackers and socks. Because if I ever see my father again under fluorescent lights, I want to have something to hand him that isn't just my heart. I keep one chair in my living room empty because I like the look of space. I keep one drawer in my kitchen empty because emptiness used to be a threat and is now a promise. On the days it feels like the security guard might call, I put my hand on my desk and push my palm flat until I can feel the wood remind me it is not a door. I am here. I am a woman who can say, "This is as far as it goes," to someone she loves and mean it. I am a woman who can let a man leave without hating the part of herself that believed in him. I am a woman who can go home and sit with her mother and watch a show where people challenge each other to throw things away. And when my mother sees, "We would be bad at this," I say, "Yes, we would." And we laugh until our eyes wet the same way. If I have advice, and I don't really, it's this: tell the true story gently. Tell it in a way your body can handle hearing. If people ask why you stayed, say, "Because I wanted to see if love could do it." If people ask why you left, say, "Because it couldn't." If people ask you to explain your mother, say, "She kept what she could when she lost what she had." If people ask you to explain your father, say, "He went where the pain was quiet." And if a guard ever calls you in a lobby with too much glass and says, "Your father, ma'am," and you feel your face heat with the kind of shame that makes you want to disappear, please hear me. You are not your father's worst day. You are not your mother's piles. You are a person standing upright in a moving world. Go to him if you can. Hand him water. Call someone who can help. Then go back upstairs and answer your emails. It is not betrayal to keep your life. It is love too. I used to think stories like mine needed a neat ending. They don't. They need a kind middle, and a slow hand, and a kitchen sink where you can cry without drowning. If you're in it, I see you. If you got out, I see you. If you don't know which one you are today, pour a glass of water, open a window, and let a breeze make its small argument. You're still here. That counts for more than you've been taught.